Hello everyone. Today we're going to roll some coils real quick. Coils aren't too hard, but there's a couple tips that are going to help us out a bunch. You can see I've got my clay here, wrapped in my bag, it's tied off. A lot of people will have either trash bags, some people have Ziploc bags. Whatever works for you, we want to make sure that it is sealed. Remember, the clay is just water and minerals. When we lose the water in the clay, it's no longer soft. So we're always keeping it hydrated, always keeping it sealed. Now we've talked about hydrating and wedging, so hopefully we're keeping up. My clay is nice and soft, so when I take this out, I'm gonna tear a piece off. I got nice soft clay to work with. I can squish it. This is good clay to work with. It's already hydrated, it's wedged, so we're in good shape. When I roll coils, I like to have a nice flat surface, whether it be a table. I could do this on a book, but it's going to get the book messy. You know, if you had a large book, probably not the best use of your encyclopedia, but whatever. I'm going to take a chunk. I'm going to tear off a piece. A lot of times people start with a piece that's way too big. You start off with a really big piece and you try rolling a coil. It's not really going to do what you want it to do. So we're going to go ahead and take a piece, squeeze it so that it starts to get a little longer already. And now I'm going to roll. When I roll my coil, I want to make sure I'm going from the tips of my fingers all the way to the heel of my palm as far as I can. If I'm not going that full distance, that length, then if I'm only going a little bit, what happens is only part of this ends up getting flattened out, and then we end up with this lopsided, lumpy, it's going to kind of bounce on us and our hand bounces all over the place. So to make sure it stays as round as possible, I'm going to roll my coil as far forward and backwards as I can. As long as I keep this the same thickness from one side to the other, I can roll really easily and it follows me. As soon as it gets really thick on one side or really thin on the other, this is going to start flopping all over and cause issues. So that just comes with some practice. Now this is looking like a very nice coil to work with. Some things to think about when you're working with coils. See how it's getting wet? And look, now I move it again, and now there's a little wet spot there. Now there's a little wet spot there. So water is constantly leaving my clay. This is constantly drying. The longer you sit there and roll, the more it's going to dry. And we all know what happens to dry clay. It starts cracking apart on us. And we don't want that to happen. We don't want it to crack apart and crack a whole bunch. This is starting to dry out already. So we want to make sure we're working quick. I like to use a tool here and there. In this case, are really technical, high-tech tools. Plastic butter knife. So, say I'm going to use this as a handle. I want to have good areas to connect with. So we're going to score and slip. So I'm going to cut it to about the length that I need. I have nice flat edges to attach things to, so that's good. You can't just bend a coil and expect it to bend like you want it to. It's going to find its weakest spot and break there. So we can't assume it's just going to work. On the table, not in the air, I'm going to very carefully bend just a little bit. And then I'm going to bend a little bit. I'm going to bend a little bit more. This is how I bend my coils to create a handle. Now, though I don't have a cup here, imagine this was my cup, I could attach this on and have a great little handle to it. There are many, many options of how we can roll or use our coils. Say I wanted to do something fancy. I wanted to make a little teacup. I'm going to make a question mark. Voila. See my question mark? Now if I attach this to a cup, it's going to end up looking like a teacup handle. See how that works out? Notice that if I don't score and slip, this doesn't actually connect and it will just fall off eventually. Even if it sticks when it's wet. We must score and slip, scratch and attach, or else it falls off. So many things we can do with coils. Let's see, I'm going to roll out some fun ones real quick. So I always tear off a smaller piece. And I usually make a coil a little bit larger than I need. I'm going to roll this to the left and then to the right, giving just enough pressure that it is flattening out or it's squishing down, but I'm not crushing it, I'm not smushing it, I'm not destroying it. Nice. And some people, you can even get down and get really, really small, teeny, tiny, tiny little ones. So I use this. Oftentimes I'll roll coils this small for decoration on projects. You can see how hard it is to work with. It does just fall apart. So when I do decorations, eyebrows, lips on tiny, tiny little people, I use those little miniature ones. But you can see they do crumble quite a bit. I'm going to set this to my side. You know, I'm going to make 3. Anybody know what you can do with 3 coils? You can make a braid. If your clay is not soft, you need to make sure it gets soft or stays soft. Otherwise, you're going to run into a bunch of other problems to deal with. I switched to 2 hands. If I'm going to use 2 hands, notice that my thumbs get locked. They move together in one unison, and I never stay in one spot. If you sit in one spot, you're going to end up pressing too much in one spot and cause yourself issues. I'm going to thin this one out to match that one. And I'll show you in just a moment. So if I don't move and I just keep rolling here, notice how this spot's getting so... Whoop. Yep. Notice how that spot got so thin right there? Because I didn't move my hand. I just kept the weight on the same spot, just kept rolling, and eventually it's just going to break off. So we must pay attention to the thickness, keep our hands moving side to side.
Good morning. We're moving into lunch.
All right. Got a third one. Start with one hand as far forward and backwards as I can go. Some people may be able to do this quickly. Some may need to take a little time to practice. Notice how I'm going all the way forward and backwards. That's what really keeps it round. I'm going to switch to 2 hands. Never putting too much weight in one spot and never staying in the same spot, or else I end up squishing that one spot. I'll do one more just to show you what I'm talking about trying to avoid. Give a little example. All right. If you have a coil and you're not going far, before you know it, you're going to end up with something like this. It doesn't look like it's round. It's not going to be good to work with. Go that full distance. If you're trying to roll a coil and your hands aren't going together, you're going to tear it apart every time. So be very careful. If you're rolling a coil and you just push on one side and you're not moving your hand around, it's going to tear apart. So you want to be careful. There's only a couple ways that we can do it where it is successful. There we go. That's a pretty little coil that I could use for a handle. All right, now I've got my 3 that I made over here. We have to be careful with this. Remember that we can only flex clay so many times before it's going to break on us. So what was that, 4 flexes? So if you're not careful and you roll a coil and you're whipping it all around and you've got your project and you're not careful with it, these are going to break on you. Clay, just like if you took a paper clip and flexed it, it gets work hardened and it snaps apart. So you got to be careful. However, I can't braid clay without bending it. So, bending it breaks it, but I need to bend it to use it. And that's going to cause some problems. Now, this is just for fun. I feel like braiding this. I have to be very careful. Notice how I'm supporting so much of the clay. The clay is not supporting itself. I'm being very delicate because it will want to break on me. I want to try to get a nice angle over. And if it does happen to break, well, it's clay. I'm going to work with it. Nice and careful. Notice how we're getting that break in there. So if I do have something like that break, we're going to address that in just a moment. This has been sitting out for a few minutes. You can see it's already starting to get a little cracky on me. clay will dry quick, especially when it's in these thin coils, because there's not a lot of material, and most of the material that is there is touching the air, which means it dries quick. Awesome. And we have the start of a nice braid for us. If I have anywhere that is broken, I just take a little bit of water on my finger, and I can take that spot, press it together with a little water, and try to squish them into each other. That water helps me blend the surface. Anywhere where there's a bunch of cracks, a little water rubbing makes those cracks go away. You'll notice that all I did is barely wet my finger, and I'm already able to address several different coils. It does not take a lot of water to get these to smooth out. So if you start adding a ton of water, you're going to start noticing it gets real sloppy. This is how we roll coils. We'll use coils to do all kinds of stuff as the year goes on. Building multiple different projects. We use them as tools to add pieces on or to build parts up.